Right, thanks very much, Shweta. And the lights came back on just on cue. The perils of live television from the snowy mountains of Davos. We'll have Imran Khan on in just a minute, but Richard, if I can start with you. You know, we've just come, both Vikram and I, from a session on terrorism and global security, which we're told is unusual, in a sense, for the World Economic Forum to be looking at so specifically. Do you find Davos this time different, in a sense? Do you find it reflecting the churn that the world seems to be in over so many different issues, whether it's the model of capitalism or the power balance shifting from the west to the east?
Well, I think you put your finger on it. There's so many different issues. Often Davos is dominated by one theme, not this year. The people from the Middle East are obviously concerned or preoccupied with Tunisia, Egypt,
Yemen,
Hezbollah, the Palestinian revelations. That's that. People from all over are obviously concerned, as you talked about, with the general shift in power, the sense that the emerging world is now soon to become economically the majority part of the world, and what that may mean for political power, military power. Essentially, will the international system be able to adapt? Europe is still preoccupied very much with the euro and the economic crisis of Greece and the other countries. The United States, we just had the President's State of the Union speech. He laid out a domestic agenda, but there's no progress whatsoever on the politics of dealing with our economic crisis.
Absolutely.
So all of these things are happening. So Davos this year is pulled in many directions.
Richard, one of the themes that I seem to be picking up on the economic side is that there seems to be a lot of concern as to where the global economy is going, as there should be. But in particular, a couple of signals that we are picking up, which may have a lot of worrying signals for Indian policymakers, the prospect of continued high food prices, inflation, oil. Now, if food prices remain high, that leads to instability not just in India, but in large parts of the world.
Inflation is picking up. You see it in China with the asset bubbles. You see it in India. You see it around the world with food prices. You're beginning to see some potential pressures in the United States. We're now forecasting, many people are saying 3.5%, 4% growth. We will not be able to sustain this level of virtually nil interest rates. But the problem for the world is, how do you begin to react to inflation without repressing a still very delicate economic recovery? So getting that balance right. And then there's the added problem, as you suggest. You still have, considerable starvation in the world, or food shortages in the world. So it's not just an economic problem, it's a living problem, it's a human security problem. What are you going to do to subsidize these prices? Where's the money going to come from? How are you going to do that without disturbing markets? So yes, there's a sense that even while in the short run, we're going to be growing a bit better. India is going to be growing, 8-9%, China 9-10%. But there's a sense, a little bit of a gathering storm out there, whether it's later this year, early next year, the sense that the economic underpinnings are in jeopardy.
Klaus Schwab talks of a burnout. But do you think that's an overstatement?
I don't know what a burnout means.
The other irony I find when he uses that phrase, when he thinks that there's a kind of possible meltdown coming of models that have previously driven the world and there was consensus on, he doesn't even call himself a capitalist. And he's the creator of the World Economic Forum.
Well, I think we've seen some shift. The American, the so-called Washington consensus, this very unregulated free market model, took a serious hit over the last 2.5 years. And we have to see now what kind of a recovery we have. There's a lot of support for the Singapore Chinese model. But again, we haven't seen that can continue to provide political stability and other sorts of opportunities. A little bit of convergence in the middle, they're going to loosen up, and we're probably going to become a little bit more regulated, and we'll see where the balance is. The bigger problem is international. We don't have in place anything like the mechanisms we need to deal with currency issues, to deal with trade issues. You go around the world, you look at virtually every international challenge, also in the security field, proliferation issues, look at the problems with Iran and North Korea, look at the environmental breakdown of the Copenhagen process. We simply don't have in place the mechanisms for dealing with things politically.